It's been 5.5 years since I've been on this high-fat, strict carnivore lifestyle, and the most popular question that I get asked every single day is, what is your carnivore blood work? We want to see the results, specifically your cholesterol numbers. So today I'm going to deep dive into my lab work as a carnivore and compare it to when I was on a vegan diet. And I'll be bringing on board certified family physician, Dr. Tony Hampton, to review my numbers. Before we continue with the video, I just wanted to share that Dr. Tony Hampton is a board certified family physician, an ex-vegan turned carnivore himself, and also a specialist in diabetes. You all can get a chance to ask your personal carnivore and healing questions to Dr. Tony Hampton when you join our next 30-day carnivore challenge. Our monthly guest lineup is always exceptional. We have Dr. Hampton himself, Dr. Anthony Chafee, Dr. Robert Kiltz, Coach Rebecca Heichman, and the entire team of SBG coaches that you can learn from throughout the challenge. For more details and to directly sign up, just go to the URL shown on the screen, sbgmeetup.com, and I've also linked a clickable link down below in the description box. So I'm here with my amazing carnivore team featuring Dr. Tony Hampton. We have the honor to go through some important carnivore diet lab work, and it's really going to be a masterclass learning how to understand and analyze carnivore diet lab work. So first, Dr. Hampton, welcome. Introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, Bella, for the opportunity, and the rest of the team. It's so important that people understand labs. So the metabolic health doc is here to at least share my perspective. I'm a family doctor in Chicago with training in obesity and nutrition, and I try to teach the value of using nutrition to heal. So I'm really excited to be here, and a big part of healing is to know where you stand, and the labs provide foundational information that we all should know.
Absolutely. Let's jump right in with two important questions to warm everybody up. What are some potential problems and potential solutions for how doctors convey lab results to patients?
Yeah, I think it's so important that we change the paradigm. Right now, your doctor in a conventional practice will order labs. You get the results, and sometimes you get it nowadays by the electronic medical record, and you don't know what to do with those results. And to be honest with you, they could do a better job of explaining things in that setting. So let's just say you get a high cholesterol or you're anemic. You just end up with a prescription for your cholesterol or some iron, but no explanation of why you have a high cholesterol or why you're anemic. And that's what we need to change. We need to go from the diagnosing and managing to a model where we actually understand the root cause. The second part of your question is, what's the solution? So I think labs need to look like, I remember when I got my labs from the insurance company, and it seems like the explanation was a little bit better than most of the labs you get from a health system. So number one, can we have better explanations? Number two, can we have doctors and advanced practice clinicians who understand what metabolic labs are, how to order them, and how to interpret them? And the last thing is that we need to make sure we can pay for these labs. So we need to get the insurance companies to value these labs that we're doing, these metabolic labs, and we need them to cover them so that people don't have to go out of their pocket in order to get these valuable labs done.
And my second question for you, how should we approach labs when we want to get them?
It's really important that we, first of all, we understand that there's multiple ways to determine if you're healthy. And we use this term metabolic health, which talks about blood pressure, blood sugar, triglycerides, HDL, and of course your belly size. But if we're concerned about metabolic health, because it's like 70, 80% of all the things that will make you sick, then we need to make sure we don't just focus on one thing. You need to look at the big picture, because you may find one thing that's off and it may make you nervous, and one thing that's, looking really good that makes you happy. So number one, let me give you an example. In my previous days, I actually delivered babies, and I was taking care of pregnant women. And we knew that if you were pregnant, that your cholesterol and your triglycerides may be off during pregnancy, because a lot of those hormones are going to be elevated to support the health of the baby, right? So measuring cholesterol and triglycerides during pregnancy is probably not a good idea. So, and also there's no reference ranges for people who are pregnant. So it's really important that as we think about labs, we have to use nuance. Even something like a prostate lab in a guy, if they have intimacy within 48 hours of their PSA lab, it may elevate their PSA. So we have to know this nuance so that we can better assess, what we should and shouldn't worry about. And we also need to know that our diet affects our lab. So people who are carnivore may have a different lab because the standard of care is based on the standard American diet. So if that's true, not only do we need to know that ourselves, but as a clinician, but the patients need to know that so they'll know not to panic if they see an elevation in the lab that may be normal for a carnivore. So there's a lot of things to think about, but the big message I want to leave you guys with is if one lab is off, but everything else is okay, you're probably okay. So let's be sensible with the labs and ask questions. Whenever you're not sure, demand an answer.
I'm actually going to share screen and share my vegan to carnivore cholesterol numbers for you, Dr. H. And if you
Hello.
don't mind providing your thoughts, just some backstory, 6 years straight vegan. I'm now 5.5 years carnivore.
So the first thing that people need to understand is that things will be different with different dietary patterns. Let me just explain a little bit about these types of cholesterol. So the LDL cholesterol, which is the so-called bad,
Mhm.
is a low density lipoprotein. So it's actually not a cholesterol, it's actually a carrier of cholesterol. It has a larger proportion of cholesterol to protein, making it less dense, and it basically carries cholesterol to the cells like that mortar. So I don't consider it bad. That's number one. So if I see an elevated LDL, I don't necessarily see it bad if the ratios are okay. So number two, the HDL is the high density lipoprotein, and it has a larger proportion of protein to cholesterol. Thus, they call it high density, and it packages and returns cholesterol to the liver for recycling. And that's why they consider it a good cholesterol. And then finally, the triglycerides, they're really named after, there's three fatty acids with a glycerol backbone, thus the name. And it's basically the part of the cholesterol that correlates the most, not the LDL, it's the triglycerides that correlate the most to your risk for heart disease. So if if your triglycerides go down, that is a very good sign, especially if your good cholesterol HDL goes up. And by the way, in order to reduce your triglycerides, there's only two things that have been known to do that very effectively. Number one, exercise. Number two, a low carb diet. Um, and by the way, that triglyceride to HDL ratio that we care about, it tends to improve greatly with this dietary pattern and it tends to not necessarily do that with the other pattern. So let's just look at it and see the difference. So if we start with the total cholesterol, you see that in the vegan diet, the total cholesterol was a lower number. And then when you go to the carnivore diet, it shoots up, right? And part of that is that with a vegan diet, you're definitely eating less saturated fat and things of that nature. And on the surface, you would say that doesn't sound like a good thing.
Mhm.
Well, the reality is it's the ratios that matter. So, and you guys may want to do the math for me today, but
Mhm.
the HDL, which is the high density, the good cholesterol, you notice that it went from 73 and it went up to 98. And it doesn't sound like a big rise, but it is so hard to raise that HDL. What's the best way to raise HDL? A low carb diet, which is carnivore as well. So you'll see that rise. So far, so if we were to start off, we'll say, okay, I'm not sure if I should be concerned about this cholesterol if I don't know these things, but I'm certainly happy about this HDL. And then you'll look at the LDL, the low density lipoprotein, which some people consider the bad cholesterol. And you'll see that number rise substantially. And we
Mhm.
do see this in general, what you should expect if you do low carb, keto, or carnivore, you may see a slight rise in the LDL, and in some cases, even more. We have lean mass hyper responders, people who respond more, and Dave Feltman and others are doing research. So far, the preliminary data suggests that that rise is not of any concern. So we look
Mhm.
at the vegan diet, the cholesterol to HDL ratio is 2.4, and it went up to 3.7 with carnivore. But the thing that is really critical and more predictive of a future heart attack is what I mentioned earlier is the triglycerides. And if you look at her vegan triglycerides, they were at 97 because in that dietary pattern, she wasn't really using triglycerides as a source of fuel because she was using carbs as her fuel source, which allowed the triglycerides to float around and to potentially cause harm in her arteries. It plummeted to 15. So that's a huge drop, which proves that she was using this dietary pattern. But more importantly, it's the ratio that matters. So if we were to do the math, we'd say, well, if we divide the triglycerides, and I want somebody
Yeah,
do
I
that
can do
for us,
that. Triglycerides.
15
Okay.
divided by 98.
Got it. 0.15.
Oh my God.
Oh,
That's a good, oh my God, by the way.
really?
The
Okay.
goal is to be less than 2.0, guys, and we have a 0. That's one of the lowest I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So shout out,
Wow.
blessings there. Let's go back and do the vegan version just to be fair. And that's going to be 97 divided by 73. So what do we get there?
We have 1.328.
So the good news is not too bad. So, and for all the vegans who are checking us out, that's probably way better than the standard American diet, right? So that's the good news. The bad news is that it doesn't even compare to the carnivore diet in terms of the beauty of that number that my superstar lab taker just got. Amazing. That's amazing. So let's keep going. The next thing we focus on is our blood sugar. As you know, the A1C is a measure of glycosylation of hemoglobin. Hemoglobin are our red blood cells that help us to carry oxygen, but we can actually glycosylate it, add glucose to the hemoglobin, which will give us an average because the hemoglobin lives for about 3 months. So it'll give us about what's the average blood sugar over the last 3 months. And both of these numbers are not bad. You want to be less than 5.7. So 5.7 is where borderline diabetes start, but you'll see when she had a vegan diet, it was under that target at 5.5. However, you'll also notice that that number goes down substantially to 4.7 on a carnivore diet. So what that tells us is that because you're eating foods that don't raise the blood sugar, and the blood sugar is not going to then raise the insulin and cause damage, you are less likely with a 4.7 A1C to not have any consequences of a high blood sugar, including heart disease, stroke, and dementia, and things of that nature. So it's really an impressive drop. And she can't drop too much because the number's already in normal range. So I'm just really impressed with the number.
If you're new to a carnivore lifestyle and you're currently going through symptoms like lower energy, headaches, and muscle cramping, these could all be signs of an electrolyte imbalance. And to quickly fix it, you can just simply salt all of your meals a little bit more generously. And if that doesn't resolve your issues, it could be very helpful to lean on a high quality electrolyte supplement. The one that I consistently recommend is from this brand called Element, spelled out LMNT, and specifically this teal blue colored box labeled raw unflavored, because it doesn't have any stevia or extra flavorings. It's literally just the 3 electrolytes our body needs: sodium, potassium, and magnesium. This is what each of the little packets look like. Super easy to just throw in your work bag, gym bag, take it on the go. You just rip it open, pour it in whatever beverage you're drinking, mix it up, drink it down, and you're good to go. You all can get a free sample pack like this, and it does include the raw unflavored with any purchase. If you go to the URL shown on the screen, drinklmnt.com/SPGAL. Also link them down below.
High sensitivity C-reactive protein. I'm really happy that your doctor ordered a high sensitivity version because a high sensitivity version is going to give us some more sensitive results in the normal range, 0.3, and nothing to sweat there. But look at this. Let's go to the B12, right?
Yeah.
Wow. So, B12 is a very important vitamin, and it's important because it's very good. It's really important for energy, and that's why a lot of people who are trying to have more energy will take a B complex or get a B12 shot. Everybody, who's in obesity clinics think they should get a B12 shot. It's really overrated for that. But at the end of the day, the best sources of B12 actually come from animal protein. Now, most of us who have been plant-based in the past know this because if you are vegan in particular, which I have been for a while, you have to take a B12 supplement. It's really more about the bacteria, but at the end of the day, it comes from the bacteria in animals. And so ultimately, don't be surprised if you see an improvement. Now, going from 200 to 1400 is a huge jump, and that's because it's coming from an animal-based diet. And even if you supplement B12, you probably are not getting the amount your body really needs. So, Bella,
Yeah.
so far you're winning the lottery.
Oh, good. Thank you. And I did want to share that when I was vegan, having 205 as my B12, I had no period. So I was anemic and I was suffering with amenorrhea. And having healthy babies and being a mom has always been one of my biggest dreams. So it was a huge wake-up call when I completely lost my period after being a vegan. It was phenomenal to me that my period came back within 3 months after not having it for 2 years when I only ate fatty red meat. A lot of people just cannot believe that you can heal hormones and have, healthy cycles as a young female.
Yeah.
Clearly you can.
But
Yeah.
you get all of those hormones primarily from cholesterol. Cholesterol
Yeah.
converts to estrogen. Even women need testosterone. Cholesterol converts to
Absolutely.
testosterone. So if you take those things away, now you're at risk for um, anemia and many other conditions that simply would have been resolved with a steak. And it just doesn't, it's like, it seems like it can't be true, doctor. Why can't I just eat the spinach?
Hmm.
Because the spinach has a lot of iron and things like that in it. Well, but it's not bioavailable. There's things called anti-nutrients that will literally not allow those nutrients to be absorbed. Only 2% of iron is absorbed from spinach. So Houston, we have a problem. Not to mention the healing potential that occurs when you eat those saturated fats, that beta hydroxybutyrate that you're going to have in your diet will heal your gut so that the tight junctions are tight. And when you're trying to absorb the appropriate things, you can. And when you're not trying to absorb the inappropriate things, you don't. So the benefit of eating the nutrient-rich foods that are bioavailable that also heal your gut is beyond belief. And I had no clue because they didn't teach me this in medical school.
Yeah.
Maybe this explains why when I am cutting up my steak and eating my steak, I literally tell people this is my medicine. Meat is my medicine. I feel like I'm taking my vitamins as I bite into that steak.
Truly.
You mentioned about people getting the B12 shots, and I used to have to get a B12 shot every, I think it was 4 weeks or something like that.
Mhm.
I would feel good for that time, and then, a couple days later, I'd be right back down in the crapper. And now being carnivore, like I think that's where kind of that limitless energy comes from now, is because my B12 is like way off the charts. Can you speak a little bit more about the benefits of having a regulated B12 or like a higher or more optimal B12?
Yeah, it's actually unbelievable how important it is to have your levels normal. And I just think that again, I literally had to go to get a master's in nutrition to learn any of this stuff. And just referring to my nutrition colleagues was just not enough, right? So if I don't have enough B12 in my diet, well, I'm going to be tired, right? Because our adrenal glands actually depend on that nutrient. I'm going to be anemic. There's different types of anemias. You have iron deficiency, but you also have anemias called pernicious anemia and megaloblastic anemias. And if you don't have B12 in your body, we're going to have an issue with that. And so that's not good. Um, B12 is also important when you think about enzymes, even your DNA, when you're trying to keep it healthy, your hormones, they all require B12. So, but the thing I think about in clinic on a more practical level is our nervous system, because when I have a person coming in with neuropathy and they're trying to do a lower carb diet, keto, carnivore, but they're having symptoms, I have to hit them with some B vitamins, because the B vitamins, in particular B12 and B6, are going to help heal our nervous system. So, and what people find when those levels get back up, speaking to what you just stated, their energy level is higher. Their mood is better and they feel less depressed. They also, because they're less depressed, probably just feel less stressed. So they really do really well with their energy level, their mood, and all of those nerves that tend to need that B12 to be effective. So that's kind of what comes to mind. And I'm just, again, these are the things that happen that people are not, they don't sign up for this. They're just trying not to have diabetes. They're just trying to do better with their blood pressure. Or they have some condition like lupus and they've heard that a carnivore diet was good for their autoimmunity. And then all of a sudden, all of this other stuff gets better. And they're like, oh my God. In fact, when I was on the low carb cruise, shout out to Scott, who was my table mate. You know, you sit at the same table, right? Shout out to Scott and his wife. And he had a page full of things that got better doing this dietary pattern. A page. He'll probably be a future guest on my podcast. I couldn't believe the list. And he literally he would have conversations with people and they'd mention something. He'd be like, oh my God, I don't have that anymore. And he wasn't even aware, he just healed. So people who haven't tried this, they have no clue what they're missing out on. And you don't have to go to the pharmacy to figure this out. You got to go to the grocery store. That's where you need to go. It's not the pharmacy, it's the grocery store. Yeah. And all the healing will start.
Absolutely. Well said. If you're loving what you're learning from Dr. Hampton in this video, you all can get a chance to ask your personal carnivore and healing questions to Dr. Tony Hampton when you join our next 30-day carnivore challenge. Our monthly guest lineup is always exceptional. We have Dr. Hampton himself, Dr. Anthony Chafee, Dr. Robert Kiltz, Coach Rebecca Heichman, and the entire team of SBG coaches that you can learn from throughout the challenge. For more details and to directly sign up, just go to the URL shown on the screen, sbgmeetup.com, and I've also linked a clickable link down below in the description box. If you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, eye-opening, and confirming of this carnivore lifestyle, I would appreciate it if you liked, commented, and shared this video. This will really help me get the word out about this carnivore lifestyle and how powerful and healing it can be. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. SBG out.